If you think interest rates are the biggest force shaping the next decade of wealth, you're looking in the wrong place. There is a structural shift already underway, and it's larger than stimulus, larger than the Fed, larger than any election cycle. And it involves up to $124 trillion, trillion with a T. We are witnessing the largest wealth transfer in modern history. Roughly 50% of all wealth in the United States and about $78.5 trillion is concentrated in one generation. They built it through decades of expansion. A stock market that has increased nearly 30-fold since the mid-1980s. Real estate that's transformed modest primary homes into multi-million-dollar assets. Business ownership, equities, land. Now over the next 2 decades, between $84 and $124 trillion will move from that generation to their children, their grandchildren, and charitable foundations. More than $1 trillion per year is already changing hands now, and it's accelerating. Gen X alone is projected to inherit nearly $1.4 trillion annually over the next decade. Millennials are expected to receive over $45 trillion over the next 25 years. And this is not a small trend. It's a capital migration. Here is where it becomes even more powerful. The estate tax rules have changed. Beginning January 1st of 2026, the federal estate tax exemption is permanently set to $15 million per individual, $30 million per married couple, indexed for inflation. If this legislation had not passed that exemption, that would have been cut by more than half. In real terms, a married couple can now transfer $30 million to their heirs without paying federal estate tax. For most affluent American families, federal estate tax is effectively neutralized. That's huge because friction slows capital. And when friction is reduced, velocity increases. There's another layer that many overlook. The step-up in basis. If you purchase a stock at $50 and it grows to $100, you owe capital gains tax on that $50 gain when you sell. However, if you pass away and your heirs inherit that stock at $100, their cost basis resets to $100. The unrealized gains disappear for tax purposes. No capital gains on that appreciation. Now, apply that across trillions in equities, private businesses, investment, real estate. Now, you're looking at a massive tax efficient wealth transfer here, and that's structural fuel for asset markets. Now, ask yourself this: what happens when trillions move from one generation to another? Younger investors behave differently. They tend to allocate more aggressively. They lean towards innovation technology, AI, alternative assets, crypto, venture-style growth plays. They're also statistically more comfortable with leverage and risk. Some will invest wisely, some will invest emotionally, and some will misallocate capital entirely. But here's what really matters. Money does not disappear. It flows. Every dollar invested, every dollar spent, every dollar reallocated supports assets somewhere. And this is where we want to be. Asset owners are going to benefit. And that's the long arc of capital cycles. Now let's talk about housing. Real estate represents one of the largest components of generational wealth in America. As inheritance increase, you will likely see more all-cash buyers, more down payment assistance from parents, which we are already seeing a lot of help today, but more move-up transactions, a lot of second home purchases, more investment property acquisitions. Liquidity stimulates transaction volume, and transaction volume supports pricing stability. Pricing stability increases seller confidence overall, and seller confidence definitely increases inventory. Now, inventory plus capital equals market activity. And this is how the housing market reunites, particularly in high equity regions. When trillions move with reduced tax friction, housing does not sit on the sidelines. It participates. There's also a regulatory component unfolding at the same time in parallel. Lending oversight is easing in certain areas. Capital requirements for banks are also shifting. Mergers and acquisitions are becoming more streamlined. You'll see community banks, they're expanding lending capacity as well, while larger institutions may free up capital for broader deployment. And when credit expands and capital flows, economic activity follows. And the financial benefits, risk assets respond great, and sectors tied to growth and innovation often see disproportionate inflows. Crypto assets, while volatile, sit directly in the line side of younger inheritors who are comfortable with emerging technologies. And not all of that capital will be deployed intelligently, but deployment is what matters. Velocity is what matters. So the real takeaway is not hype, it's structural awareness. We're not discussing a temporary stimulus, we're discussing multi-decade capital migration here. And when capital moves from older generations who tend to preserve to younger generations who tend to deploy, the economy behaves very differently. Markets behave very differently. Housing behaves, again, very differently. Even if a fraction of that projected $124 trillion flows into equities and real estate over the next 20 years, that's a sustained tailwind pressure, and tailwinds compound. The people who understand structural capital shifts before they become obvious are typically the ones who benefit the most. This is not about chasing headlines. This is about recognizing patterns. The largest wealth transfer in history is underway. Tax friction has been reduced here. Capital velocity is increasing, and asset markets tend to respond to sustained inflows. Position accordingly. We need to think long term. Think long term because this is not theoretical. This has already begun. And this is exactly why I study the markets the way I do. Because real estate doesn't exist in a vacuum. Interest rates matter, inventory matters, but capital flows matter even more. When trillions move, housing responds. When tax rules shift, asset behaviors shift. And when generations change, demand absolutely changes. And if you're making a decision about where to live, when to sell, when to buy, or to how to position your money, you deserve advice from someone who understands the bigger picture and the team that we have around us. Not just comps, not just the headlines, but micro cycles and capital trends and the long-term wealth strategy that's best for you and your family. My name is Kari Wahl, and I work at the intersection of real estate and wealth strategy. And my job is to help you make smart, informed decisions that align with where the market is going, not where it's been. If conversations like this help you see the market more clearly, make sure you subscribe. Also, share this with someone who's thinking about, buying, selling, curious about rates, and more stories that we have to share and help them put together to make the best decisions moving forward. And also follow along for more long-term strategic insights on real estate, investing, and building lasting wealth. Because the next decade will reward positioning, and positioning starts with understanding.